Meyer, founder and CEO of Amazon solutions provider Envision Horizon.
And I'm Todd Piechowski, Director of Performance Marketing at Envision Horizons. We've teamed up to make the Common Mistakes podcast.
Todd and I meet with business owners, leaders, and investors to discuss common mistakes and other business experiences they've learned from. Tune in every other Tuesday for your dose of business advice. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Common Mistakes, where we talk about mistakes we've made along the way so you don't have to learn the hard way. I'm Laura Meyer.
And I'm Todd Piechowski. Today, we are thrilled to have Jordan Buckner on the show. Jordan is the founder of Foodbevy.com, which is an organization that helps food and beverage founders grow from startup to scale. Prior to that, he also co-founded TeaSquares, which was a line of superfood energy bars designed to help stay focused and alert so they could achieve their passions. He has a load of wisdom surrounding food and beverage, CPG brands, everything in that space. So really delighted to have you on the show today. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you, and happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I always like to kick it off that you made a mistake that had one of the greatest impacts on you and where you learned a lot.
Definitely. So one of the business mistakes that I committed when launching my brand TeaSquares was the idea that I should make our energy bars as different from anything else out there as possible, because it would give us the biggest advantage and make it really hard to copy. So essentially, the original idea was to have like bite-sized energy bars that were infused with tea, like green tea and black tea, to help give you energy and focus for the day. But instead of making it just like a traditional long energy bar or a protein bar, we decided to, one, make them into bite-sized squares. So essentially cut the bar into four. Second, we pack them in a multi-serve pouch. And so they're about 16 squares per pouch. Third, our flavors tasted great, but there are things like citrus, green tea, matcha, and acai blueberry. And fourth was this whole concept of tea for energy in the first place. And I thought, great, now we have a product that is so different from anything else out there that no one can copy us. The problem, no one in the whole world knew what our product was because they had no reference point, they had no basis. And every time we talked to a customer doing a demo in the store, it took like 10 minutes to really explain what the product was. And, eventually they'd be like, oh, so it's kind of like an energy bar, but with tea and why tea? And it taught me the biggest lesson, which is instead of making your product as different as possible, really tap into an existing consumer behavior or problem that that tons of people are currently experiencing, and then make one, maybe two meaningful points of difference in that product and keep everything else the same. Because that way you can say, hey, it's like this thing that you already buy, but better because of this. And people instantly can understand the product and why it's different, and they can make a decision if it's for them or not. But the more you have to educate, the more expensive it is, and the faster you'll run out of money.
I love this example. And I actually remember in undergrad in one of my business classes, we had to do a whole case study on Bluetooth and how when Bluetooth launched in the market, no one knew what the heck it was. Like, is it blue? Is it dentistry? Like, what is this wireless connection that exists in the world? So totally agree that if customers don't have some type of reference point, whether it's energy bars or it's a new technology, most people don't have the time or want to spend the time in learning about something new.
No, that's so true. And reflecting back, we made it all about us and all about the product and not about the customer and what they were looking for.
On that note, what tips do you generally give, kind of leaning into Foodbevy a little bit? Or what tips would you give aspiring entrepreneurs, brands in this space when it comes to product market fit and research and knowing when that product is a bad product? Is there a certain point in time when it's time to call it quits, or how do you consult brands in that arena?
I love this topic of product market fit, and there's a couple of ways of approaching it. But one of the simplest that I found is that, when you think about a founder coming up with an idea, especially in the food and beverage space, or even now is like the software or website space. It's really easy to start a company these days. You can do it with almost no money, a couple $100. But what a lot of founders don't realize is that it's really expensive to scale up that company, to acquire new customers, to get it in front of new people, to manufacture the product, to maintain it. And so there's three paths that I really see founders kind of taking. One is that they built something without talking to customers, and they find out that no one wants it, or at least there's not a large enough market that you can easily access that will pay the prices to sustain the business. The second is that maybe you have a product that there's a group of people that like, but it has a slow category growth. People already have their favorites, and you're just in an environment where it's going to take you 10, 20 years to be successful. And you just have to be prepared for that journey. It's hard for a lot of people when they're looking to kind of sell in 3 or 5 years or think they're going to become a millionaire quickly. And the third are products that you see that have this very quick growth curve where they kind of seem to just take off out of nowhere in 2 to 3 years. And the thing that differentiates those products from everything else, it actually isn't the product. It's the customer and the market. So the best thing that founders can do if they're looking for quick success or relatively quick success is tap into an existing consumer demand and ride that wave. Have a right product at the right time based on a movement that's going to move forward with or without you. The most popular one in the last couple of years in food is the move towards the keto diet, right? It was based on similar things in the past, like the Atkins diet and the whole idea of low carb, low sugar trends, but a lot of people were kind of moving back into that. And everyone was searching for food products that fit the keto diet, and nothing existed, 5, 6 years ago. And so what are people doing? They're making it themselves at home. They were trying to find recipe hacks on the internet. And eventually, there's this big white market for products that were specifically targeting that group. And so any company that launched in the last 5 years with keto on the product that had a relatively good taste saw huge growth curves where they were able to sell $1 million, $2 million in their first year or two, just because the consumer demand was so high. Whether their products existed or not, the consumers were looking for those products. And so whether it's food or any other category, you find an existing consumer demand that's moving like crazy, and you tap into that market with a great product, and you'll see a fast path to success.
So customer demand first, product second. That's the takeaway.
Exactly. And I think primarily too, a customer demand that's growing quickly.
What are good resources to identify that growing demand? Is it scouring Pinterest and seeing what recipes are trending? Is it just being, I feel like it's very difficult to find the right place, right time. So where are there resources to at least start to uncover some of those trends?
Yeah, that's really true. And if you think about a lot of the success stories recently, they came from people who were within the community that saw the fast growth. Just even as an example, RX Bar, who was taking advantage of the kind of clean label and Whole30 diet trend, the founders were going to CrossFit gyms when they were first popular. And so they were experiencing the problem firsthand, but they were also part of this larger movement. And so I think for entrepreneurs, if you're not part of a community that's kind of growing like that, it's looking at Facebook groups that are really geared towards a specific topic and seeing the activity and growth there. There's Facebook groups that have thousands of people for all topics, and some are incredibly active, and they'll tell you what their problems are on that site. Just as for instance, my wife was really big into cooking, and she's part of a Cantonese food group where people are looking for recipes that they grew up with, but their parents or their grandparents are no longer around to teach them. And so there's this huge opportunity for someone to make it really easy to teach or cook or prepare Cantonese dishes based on the demand from that Facebook group. Or similar things have been said about Reddit communities. That's another really good one. And then just kind of looking at a lot of news reports, trend reports, things that people are talking about, and then really diving deep and finding the communities that are kind of forming around these topics. And you have to get scrappy. If it was really easy, a lot of people would be doing it. And so you really have to get scrappy and find these communities.
On the topic of communities, I would love to dig in a little bit deeper into Foodbevy. What's been that journey in terms of building a community, and what are maybe some things you've learned along the way there?
Yeah, so as we discussed a little bit, I previously ran an energy bar company, TeaSquares, built it from the ground up. That was really one of my first experiences in the CPG world. Learned a ton about what to do, what not to do. And one thing that I absolutely loved, in addition to building the product, was the community in this space of other founders who were all trying to figure it out together. And what I realized is that a lot of founders like me were experiencing the same problems. And I might spend 2 weeks trying to find a solution. And then I talked to a founder and they're like, oh yeah, we experienced this a year ago. Here's like the 10-minute answer to find the best solution. And so when we were writing down TeaSquares due to the pandemic, I thought, where do I want to make the best impact next? And it was really this space of building community for emerging food and beverage founders who are going through these crazy journeys. And I always say, starting a business is going to be hard, but it doesn't have to be so damn hard, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. There's other people that want to help you be successful. And so I set out to build a community, and really we've grown it now to about 750 founders from food, beverage, some health and supplement companies all around the US and around the world. We have members in New Zealand and South Africa, a number of other countries, and really with the goal of providing the tools, education, and resources to help those founders grow from those early startup days to scale. So most of our members are between like 200K and 10 million in revenue, and experiencing the same growth pains and the same problems. And so we have like a community Slack channel where we're sharing tips, advice, and answering questions. We host weekly webinars on topics that our community talks about and we bring in experts around it. And then we also have a learning database as well with how-to guides on there. So the whole idea is really to bring founders together, share information, share resources, so that everyone who has a great idea for a natural products company can be successful.
Yeah, I love just having that community accessibility. It just provides, we work specifically with Amazon brands and businesses, and there's just, in this niche as well, there's just a lack of information that's readily available. So having that like-minded community that you can ping ideas off of, get resources from, it's just, I'd love to understand how Foodbevy community views Amazon in relation to their overall goals. Is it retail first, then e-commerce, or is there a certain playbook you look at when it comes to e-commerce and Amazon?
So first off, I'll say I am a huge fan of Amazon and what it can build for your business. With TeaSquares, we were in retail, we had D2C, and just got set up on Amazon, but as like a first-time brand where it wasn't my focus. I think it probably took like 6 months to get on Amazon and get ungated and go through the whole process. And it was a huge hassle. And then I decided to invest 3 months in really learning everything I could about Amazon to make it successful. And wow, like were there a lot of things to learn about? And I know you experience this every day. And there's, dozens more that have developed since. And so I learned how Amazon worked, the opportunities and the pitfalls. And so I bring that mindset to the brands that I work with within the Foodbevy community. And from the brand side, there are some who love Amazon. There are others who think that Amazon will like take all their money and fees and advertising, and they'll end up with nothing at the end. And then there's a bunch who are just lost. They're like, I don't know how to think about Amazon as part of my channel strategy. It seems really complicated and I don't have the time to deal with it. And so I always recommend that founders get started on Amazon early, because it takes time to start building up momentum. Work, especially in the food category where you have to go through ungating process, work with someone who has gone through that process to get you through, because as you know, if you do it incorrectly at the beginning, it can delay you like 3-6 months, a year. You might just not end up being able to sell on Amazon. And so get it set up correctly, work with someone who understands how to build your product listing, how to get discovered, and really how to grow your business on there. And then once you kind of get through that process, decide if you want to learn that yourself and take it over, or continue to work with a group to manage that for you. But it's absolutely an instrumental part of of business in your D2C strategy, especially because a lot of consumer discovery is happening on Amazon and increasingly for food and beverage products as well.
And Jordan, I know a topic that you discuss a lot, and I've seen in your LinkedIn posts as well, is that migration from going online to brick and mortar, or just juggling that balance of being multi-channel. And this is a theme or a topic that's actually come up in some of our other episodes, is when you move from being a D2C business to a multi-channel business, there's so many learning curves that occur. And curious what some of those mistakes are that you've seen along the way when either negotiating contracts with retailers, or just how to go from being super nimble online to now having to have these flushed out plans because you have to take into account what the retailers are going to do.
Ooh, I love this. I think the bottom line, the biggest assumption to kind of set straight up front is that every single channel is hard. D2C is hard. Amazon is hard. Building a retail wholesale business is hard. I talk to brands who are started on D2C, and they're like, oh, my Facebook ad costs and acquisition costs are going so high. I just wish I was in stores. I wouldn't have to deal with this. And vice versa. People in stores who are saying like, oh, I wish I didn't have to deal with buyers and category resets and no one can find my product. I wish I could just like run targeted ads and drive sales. And either way, it's difficult. So in making that, I think the other thing a lot of brands experience is that for most products, founders kind of hit this ceiling selling D2C or on Amazon, where they're kind of hard to get beyond. And so sometimes it's large, sometimes around 10 million, $25 million in sales, but ultimately there's kind of a ceiling there. And that retail is still a huge volume avenue to really grow your business beyond there. And so there's a number of things to think about when you're starting in retail. I think the first and overall thing is to be successful in a retail environment. It's about volume, especially in food and beverage, but a lot of other categories as well. You need to be selling in thousands of stores. I usually peg it at least 3,000 stores to really have a foothold for your business. And that's because each individual store only sells a couple products a week. So there's a terminology that we'll use in retail or grocery, which is your product velocity, which is how many units you're selling per store per week. And if you take a category like a box of crackers, your velocity for that box of crackers is probably 1 to 2 units per store per week, right? It's a lot lower than you think about. Like unless you're selling, fresh produce that people are buying in bulk, a lot of those products, and especially like per flavor, just aren't selling that quickly. And so to make up that scale, you have to be in a lot of stores. But the watch out, as we kind of talk about product market fit, is that you have to figure out your playbook on how to increase your velocity at the beginning before you scale to too many stores. Because a lot of times what will happen is you'll launch in a category, let's call it crackers. The average velocity is 4 boxes per store per week, and your products are selling 1. You're like, this isn't too great. So if you think like, oh, maybe I'll just open up like more retailers, I'll sell to buyers and get into more stores, then my overall volume would go up. The problem is money that it takes to support those stores with promotions and charges and work with new distributors is really expensive. And so you need to first optimize for your same store velocity sales to at least get to the category average, if not beyond there, and have a playbook to do so. And so then at that point, you'll want to launch it into more stores because you have a proven method that works. I think the biggest mistake that I made was thinking that as a brand, my job was to make and create the product, and the retailer, it was their responsibility to sell it off the shelf. Huge lie. As a brand, it's your responsibility to get the product moving off the shelf. The retailer is just a placeholder. They have a door and a shelf for someone to come in and buy you, but they rely on you to actually make that difference. And case in point, when you see sales that are going on at the shelf level, the brands are footing the bill for almost all of that. And so as a founder, like when you launch in the retail, you have to think about your, call it trade spend, but essentially your customer acquisition costs for retail. And it gets really expensive. a lot of times it's like 30% of what you're selling into a retail store. And founders who are getting into the business, a lot of times they don't understand that and account for all the different costs and charges along the way. So it's definitely has its own nuanced language and a lot of costs involved, but it's really all about volume.
On the topic of volume, do you think it's better, and I'm sure this is a case by case basis, but is it better to just really focus on going after like one really large retailer, like say getting into a Target or a Whole Foods? Or is it better to work with some of those distributors that sell into those more independent or family owned retail businesses across the country?
Yeah. And what I would think about are with your product, who your customers are and what the demand is for products like yours and where those customers are shopping. So for instance, there are hundreds or thousands of gourmet specialty shops around the country that people might be looking for when they're discovering new things. And so, places like Sur La Table and places like that. And so maybe your customers are actually shopping there for specialty items, and they're going to your grocery store for like Cheerios, right? Things that they might buy every week for their family. Or you might be in a category that people are just shopping at in general around. So it's a brand that I really like called Partake Foods, and they make allergen-friendly cookies. And they started in a lot of specialty shops, but eventually launched into stores like Target because that's where their customers were actually shopping. They were, slightly more affluent moms who had kids with allergies, and their main store that they were shopping at were Target. Maybe they weren't buying all their groceries at Target, but they were kind of browsing the grocery section there. If they knew a brand was there, they would stop by and pick it up. And so you really have to understand your customer and where they shop because that makes a huge difference. The Whole Foods customers is going to be different from the Walmart customer, which is different from the Costco customer.
Yeah, and I will just shout out to Denise from Partake Foods. She's an awesome founder and I think awesome business leader. And so a thing that we often run into within the Amazon ecosystem is when there's that distribution leakage. And now all of a sudden there's these third-party sellers, as it's referred to, that are selling your products on Amazon, whether you're there or not. And what are and I'm sure this is a scenario you've seen and run into many times. What are some best practices you've seen for brands to avoid that situation, specifically with Whole Foods? Because I know you have to use a specific distributor to sell into Whole Foods, and that distributor seems to sell to retailers who also sell on Amazon.
Oh, yeah, this is a tough question. And I'd love to get your perspective as well on how often this is happening and for brands, because I think that it happens for a certain size company more often, like when their product is at a certain scale. But at the end of the day, you can only control so much. And if your goal is to get your brand everywhere, there is going to be product that you lose track of. So I've seen some brands institute a MAP policy, a minimal advertised price policy, that they will sell or make a distributor or a retailer, anyone buying their product sign. And the goal for that is to make sure that the product doesn't get discounted below a certain price in case even they want to, get rid of it because it's not selling or they're removing inventory. And that can help prevent some sellers on Amazon. But a lot of the problems, and I've seen this with brands, is that maybe they're just selling your product for 3 times the price on Amazon, right? And so they're not even buying at discount, but they're just selling it for astronomically higher. And it's tough when you're in mass distribution to track every single product down. And so the best things to do are just proactively set up your products and brand on Amazon, register for brand registry so that you are controlling as best you can the brand language around your products, making special Amazon SKUs that only you can really create and manage, and multi-packs, variety packs, bulk packs that are tough for someone else to copy. And then along with those, a lot of times it's creating a special pack that has its own unique UPC code, and so that no one can really list against it because you're the one controlling kind of what's going in there. And then I know Amazon has their new transparency program, but that gets tough if you have mass distribution in retail because you have to label every single product with that transparency sticker. So those are some of the things that I've seen brands have or try to do to mitigate that. But I'd be curious on your perspective, Laura, of like what are you seeing brands do to control that, and how big is the problem?
Well, the problem varies by brand, of course, but I think the new trend that we've seen, and we cannot give out legal advice here on this podcast, but talk to your counsel, because there are ways to design your contracts where you can protect yourself, especially if you're working with your retail partners one-to-one. So where we see our clients have the best success in mitigating the third-party sellers is actually when they stop working with distributors and they work with the retailer one-on-one. Some other things that we've seen is even with the smaller retailers, they have those agreements in place. And now there's the whole brand registry policy where you can request the invoices of the third-party sellers. And if they don't give you that invoice, then you can get them removed. And then if they send you, if you collect enough invoices, you can actually see where that leakage is coming from.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know it's tough to do it. So hopefully there's better kind of controls. I know Amazon has gotten stricter in terms of who they've been allowing to sell on the platform. So we'll see what effect that has.
I was just going to add, yeah, Amazon, the distribution leakage and control of that from Amazon's standpoint is almost strictly on the brand. So they are getting better, but it is hard. And I think, Jordan, you gave some sound advice, multi-packs, unique products to the brand that not in retail. So you're not seeing that arbitrage where they're selling it 3 times higher and making for just a bad brand messaging. And kind of sticking on the Amazon subject, sorry, this is where we live and breathe every day, but do you think that food and beverage brands can use Amazon as a kicking off point to get interest from buyers into retail? Do you think that's a good way for brands to start, given that there's generally less of those chargebacks? There's an easier road to market direct to consumer. Do you think that's a great way to start or not?
Ooh, that's tough. I think there are some retail buyers who don't like Amazon because they see it as competition of drawing customers away from their stores. At the same time, if you're a brand who is focused on building your like awareness in the marketplace and doing a ton of press and having headlines, a lot of times it's easy for a buyer to jump onto Amazon and buy your products anonymously and get the product so they can try it out if it's not available locally, versus having to buy through like your brand's website, which, you know, brands get all the data and sometimes can put it together who's kind of buying the product. And so I know some like the anonymity of buying through Amazon. I haven't, the other thing that I've talked with brands about, I don't know that I've seen any use super effectively, is to leverage the selling data on Amazon in their retail buyer meetings. I think that Amazon does give a ton of powerful information when you're through brand registry, so you can see the demographics of who's buying your products. You can see your repeat rate approximations. You can see keyword searches for what people are looking for. And so I think there's a lot of rich data that then brands can leverage for those buyer conversations. Frankly, I haven't seen brands using those enough.
Yeah, and not to mention, I think from my perspective, just the social proof with the reviews. I think I would guess that's really big for buyers. Just seeing 5,000, a few hundred even positive reviews is a good indicator that it's a solid product.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think it might backfire in some ways for newer brands if you have 50 reviews, right, which aren't bad. I think it's good for Amazon as a start, but a buyer might see that and say, they're not quite ready for us yet. And it might just be that they're not focusing on Amazon.
Yeah, I know we had a client where the buyers at Walmart as well as Target would actually pull up where their BSRs were within the category that they sold in. and they were like tracking the fluctuation of it.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Not in the food and beverage category. This is another category, but I definitely think that buyers are looking at it. There's so much more that we could discuss. I want to get into like packaging designs and all these other great topics when it comes to positioning your product. But to be conscious of time here, I also want to make sure that we have the opportunity to give you the floor to share where listeners can find you, follow you, learn more about you. What's the best way for listeners to get in touch?
Yeah, so if you're a food and beverage brand, would love to talk with you and help you along your journey and invite you to join Foodbevy community at foodbevy.com. Super easy to find, just search for it. And you can look me up on LinkedIn. It's just Jordan Buckner. And then also anyone who's looking to work with emerging food and beverage brands and founders, definitely an opportunity to get in touch and join our community. In particular, we're always looking for founders who come from underrepresented groups, minority and women-owned founders, because one of my goals is to close the resource and network gap for those founders so that they can get the resources to be successful.
Love that. Amazing. I think it was Elon Musk who said that business owners should have business showers, like women have baby showers, right? Of here are all my resources. I feel like that's what you're basically doing for a lot of these business owners. That's awesome.
It is. And I think one thing that's great about the food and beverage community in particular is that it's not as competitive as a lot of other industries. And there's this definitely an idea of the pie is big enough for all of us and we can grow the pie together. And so even as competitors, we can work together to launch new products so that we can both grow.
Amazing. And what a great analogy of using a pie for the grocery sector.
Making me hungry.
I know, I'm kind of hungry too now. I didn't have lunch yet. So, well, amazing. Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Common Mistakes. If you're not yet subscribed, be sure to follow us and visit envisionhorizons.com to sign up for our weekly newsletter with all the latest Amazon news and expert advice. For Amazon sellers looking for more support, check out our Amazon brand management platform, My Horizons, and sign up for a free trial. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you on the next episode of Common Mistakes.